I'm Lucas, 32, and until last spring, I thought I knew what family was. Not the glossy Instagram filtered kind, but the real one. The messy, complicated web you're born into, the one you'd do anything to hold together. I've always been the steady one, the guy who shows up, fixes things, and doesn't ask for applause. But somewhere along the way, I became the guy who carried everyone else's burdens while they acted like I was just there, disposable, invisible. It didn't hit me all at once. It crept in quiet as a shadow until the weight of it nearly broke me. Growing up, I was the middle kid in a loud, chaotic house. My older brother, Ethan, 36, was the star captain of the soccer team, all charisma and easy smiles. My younger sister, Ava, 25, was the baby adored from her first breath. Me, I was the one who got solid grades, never caused trouble, and heard you could do better more times than I could count. I didn't mind much. I kept my head down, earned a partial scholarship, and moved to a small apartment to study computer science. After college, I started a cybersecurity startup. It was brutal, sleepless nights, cheap coffee, and rejection after rejection from investors. But 4 years in, it clicked. A big client signed on, then another, and suddenly I was running a company that actually paid the bills. When I was scraping by, my family barely noticed. No calls, no check-ins. But when the money started rolling in, that's when I became family again. It began with small asks. Dad, 60, needed help with Ethan's apartment deposit just until he lands that promotion. Mom, 58, wanted to cover Ava's art school fees because she's so talented, Lucas, you know that. Then came the car repairs, the new fence, the vacation they deserved. Before I knew it, I was bankrolling 2 households while still getting texts like, "Hey, can you send $200 for gas?" I didn't say no. I told myself I was helping, that this was what family did. I even thought maybe I was building something lasting, something I'd be proud of one day. But there was this nagging feeling like a splinter I couldn't dig out. They never said thank you. Not once. It was like my help was expected, like I owed it for existing. Last Easter was when it started to crack. I hosted at my new place a loft with enough space for everyone. I spent days planning, hired a caterer, set up string lights on the patio. Nobody offered to chip in, not even for a bag of ice. Ethan gave a speech about family sticking together, never mentioning I'd paid for every plate on the table. Ava spent the night snapping selfies with her new girlfriend, barely speaking to me. Mom and Dad bickered about old grudges while I cleared dishes alone. I smiled through it, but something inside me was fraying. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a chilly April evening, and I'd just wrapped a 12-hour day. My phone buzzed with a voicemail from Dad. His voice was cold, clipped, like he was scolding a kid. "Lucas, you've always taken from us. You've never given anything real. If you had any self-respect, you'd stop acting like we're in your debt and just go." I froze, played it again. "You've never given anything real." My heart pounded, but not with anger, just this hollow, sinking clarity. I'd spent years pouring my time, my money, my life into them, and this was what they thought of me. I didn't call back. Didn't scream or cry. I just sat on my couch staring at the city skyline through my window. Something snapped, not loud or dramatic, but final. Like a rope I'd been clinging to just gave out. That night, I made a decision. I texted my accountant to freeze all payments tied to family accounts. No explanation, no warning. I packed a duffel bag, booked a flight to Seattle, and left. No goodbye note, no group chat announcement. Just me, a plane ticket, and the kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. For 2 weeks, nobody noticed. Not a single call or text. It was almost funny how invisible I'd become. Then Ava broke the silence. Her voice was shaky on the phone, trying to sound casual. "Hey, Lucas, my school payment didn't go through. Is something wrong with the account?" I could hear her panic, that edge of someone who's never had to fend for herself. I didn't pick up. Instead, I sent one text. Thought I never gave anything real. No follow-up, no emojis, just that. Within hours, my phone lit up 6 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Ethan, a voicemail from Dad that was pure venom. "Lucas, this isn't a game. Your sister's education is at stake. Call me now. No apology, no questions, just demands. I didn't respond. I was already in Seattle staying in a cozy Airbnb by the water. For the first time in forever, I slept through the night. No buzzing phone, no emergency texts. I walked to a pier every morning, watched the ferries glide across the sound, and let myself breathe. Back home, things were unraveling. Ava's school sent a payment overdue notice. Ethan's car insurance lapsed. Mom and Dad's utility bill bounced. The life they'd built on my dime was crumbling, and I wasn't there to catch it. But the real shift came when I got a text from my cousin Nora, 29. She's always been the one who saw through the family's nonsense. Lucas, I've watched you carry them for years. I'm proud of you for walking away. That hit me harder than Dad's voicemail. It wasn't just about money, it was about being seen. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need their approval to feel whole. I just needed to keep walking. What I didn't know was how far they'd go to pull me back or how much I'd learn about myself when they tried. Seattle's rain didn't bother me. It felt honest, like the sky was saying, "Here's the truth, deal with it." I'd been crashing at that Airbnb for 3 weeks, waking up to the sound of waves instead of my phone's endless notifications. I was 32, finally untethered, and starting to remember what it felt like to just be Lucas, not the family ATM, not the fixer of everyone's messes. But back home, the world I'd propped up was wobbling, and my family was scrambling to figure out why I wasn't there to steady it. After Ava's panicked call about her school payment, the texts and voicemails piled up. Ethan left one that was all bravado. "Lucas, what's this crap? You think you can just ghost us, man up and call." Moms were softer, guilt-laced. "We're worried, honey. This isn't like you." Dad didn't bother with voicemails. He sent emails, long accusatory blocks of text that read like court filings. One line stuck out. "You're tearing this family apart over nothing. Nothing." That word burned. Years of paying their bills, bailing them out, swallowing their indifference that was nothing to him. I didn't reply. Instead, I started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. Every morning, I'd sit by the window with a coffee, scribbling thoughts. It wasn't about venting. It was about seeing the pattern. How I'd let myself become their safety net. How they'd never once asked if I was okay. Writing it down made it real, like drawing a map of a maze I'd been lost in for years. One entry ended with a question, "When did I decide I wasn't worth more than this?" I didn't have an answer yet, but asking felt like progress. Meanwhile, the cracks were spreading. Nora, my cousin, kept me in the loop. She wasn't gossiping, she was just honest, the way family should be. Ava had to defer a semester because her tuition wasn't paid. Ethan's car got towed after he missed another payment. Mom and Dad were dodging calls from their bank about a late mortgage. Nora said they were telling everyone I'd lost it, that I was having some kind of breakdown. They're rewriting the story, she texted, but Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark aren't buying it. They know you've been holding them up forever. That meant something. Not everyone was blind to the truth. One night, I drove to Olympic National Park. I'd always wanted to see it, but every time I'd planned a trip, someone needed something. Ethan's emergency bar tab, Ava's last-minute flight home, Mom's just this once loan. Now, with no one to interrupt, I hiked a trail at dusk, the forest so quiet, it felt like the world was holding its breath. Standing there, surrounded by trees older than my problems, I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but a free one. It echoed, and for a second, I felt bigger than the weight I'd carried. Then Mom's email came. It was late, almost midnight, and I was back at the Airbnb sipping tea. The subject was blank, but the message was a novel. "Lucas, I don't understand why you're doing this. Your father's beside himself. We've given you everything, our love, our support. Family doesn't turn its back like this." She listed their struggles. Ava's school, Ethan's financial stress, their own bills piling up. No apology, no acknowledgement of what I'd done for them. Just a plea wrapped in blame. "Come home. We need you." I read it 3 times, waiting for the guilt to hit. It didn't. Instead, I felt clear, like I'd finally seen the game they were playing. I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Sarah, who'd helped me set up my business years ago. "Can you look into any legal ties I still have to their finances?" I asked. "I want out clean," she called the next day. "Lucas, you've been too generous. Your name's on a loan for your parents' house, $50,000 never repaid. And you're still listed as a guarantor on Ethan's car lease." I wasn't surprised, just tired. I told her to start untangling it all. "And one more thing," I said. "Check the cabin in the Catskills. I paid it off, but they swore it was ours. I want to know whose name is on the deed." Sarah promised to dig in. That's when things got messy. Ava posted on Instagram a cryptic story about family betrayal with a sad filter and a GoFundMe link. She didn't name me, but the subtext was clear: Big Brother bailed, save me. Nora sent me a screenshot. "She's raised $2,000 already," she wrote. "People think you're the villain." I stared at Ava's post, her teary-eyed selfie, and felt a twist in my chest. Not anger, but sadness. She was turning our private mess into a public sob story, and strangers were eating it up. I didn't comment or clap back. I just saved the screenshot for Sarah. "Add this to the file," I texted. A week later, Dad called from a new number. I didn't answer, but his voicemail was a masterclass in manipulation. "Lucas, you're killing your mother. You think you're proving a point, but you're just hurting the people who raised you. Fix this or you're no son of mine." I played it twice, not because I doubted myself, but because I needed to hear how far he'd go. No son of mine. Those words should have cut deeper, but they didn't. They just confirmed what I'd already known: I'd never been a son to him, just a resource. I kept moving forward. Sarah found the deed to the Catskills cabin, my name solo. Dad had signed it over years ago, probably thinking I'd never check. I told her to prep it for sale. "You sure?" she asked. "It's a big step." I was sure. That cabin wasn't a family heirloom, it was a lie, another thing I'd paid for while they pretended it was theirs. I spent the next few days in Seattle exploring markets, sketching in my journal, letting the city's pulse drown out the noise from home. I wasn't running anymore. I was building something new, something that belonged to me. Then Nora texted again. "Your parents are telling everyone you stole the cabin. They're saying you tricked them into signing it over." I laughed, but it was hollow. They were desperate now, spinning tales to save face. I didn't need to fight their lies with words. I had receipts, bank statements, transfer records, the deed itself. The truth was louder than their stories. But what I didn't expect was how they'd double down, how they'd try to drag me back into their chaos with one final desperate move. I was sitting in a Seattle diner, the kind with sticky tables and coffee that tastes like it's been brewing since dawn. It was my 4th week away, and I was starting to feel like Lucas again. 32 unshackled, no longer the guy who existed to fix everyone else's messes. My journal was open, pages filled with scribbled thoughts about what I wanted next. Maybe a smaller company, maybe a trip to Iceland. For the first time, I was dreaming for me. But back home, my family was spinning a new web, desperate to pull me back into their orbit. Nora's texts were my only tether to their chaos. "They're escalating," she wrote one morning. "Ava's GoFundMe is up to $5,000, and your mom's been calling relatives saying you've abandoned them." I wasn't surprised. Ava's Instagram sob story had painted me as the heartless brother who ditched his family for no reason. Strangers were donating, leaving comments like, "Stay strong, you don't deserve this." It stung, not because I cared about their opinions, but because Ava was monetizing a lie and people believed it. I sent Nora a quick reply: "Let them talk. Lies don't last." But I saved every screenshot for Sarah, my lawyer, just in case. Then Ethan got involved. He posted a vague Facebook rant about family loyalty and how some people forget where they came from. No names, but the message was clear. Comments from his buddies piled up. "Sounds like someone's ungrateful bro." I laughed, but it was sharp bitter. Ungrateful I'd paid his rent for a year when he forgot to tell me he'd been fired. I didn't clap back online. Instead, I emailed Sarah more bank records, every transfer I'd made to Ethan timestamped and totaled. The truth was my armor, and I was done letting them rewrite it. Dad's next move was bolder. He sent a letter, not an email, but an actual typed letter delivered to my office's P.O. box. It was formal, like something you'd get from a debt collector. Lucas, we demand a family meeting to address your actions. Your withdrawal of support has caused irreparable harm. We're entitled to a share of the Catskills cabin as it was a joint family asset. I read it twice, marveling at the audacity. Joint asset, I'd paid every dime from the down payment to the new roof when Dad swore it was our cabin. Sarah called it a bluff with no teeth. She'd already confirmed my sole ownership and the sale was in motion. Want to send them the deed as a reminder, she asked. I nodded. Make it official. I kept living my life. I rented a kayak one weekend, paddled out on Puget Sound until my arms burned. The water was calm, the sky gray, but endless. Out there, I didn't feel like the guy who'd spent a decade being everyone's backup plan. I felt solid, like I was finally standing on my own ground. I started sketching again, something I'd loved in high school, but dropped when Mom said it wouldn't pay the bills. I bought a cheap set of pencils and filled pages with jagged lines, mountains, waves, anything that felt free. It wasn't about talent. It was about reclaiming pieces of myself I'd let them bury. Then the family group chat exploded. I'd muted it weeks ago, but Nora forwarded screenshots. Ava, he's selling the cabin. That's our place, Ethan. He's lost it. Thinks he's some big shot now. Mom, Lucas, please, we can't lose everything. Dad, this is theft. You'll hear from our lawyer. Their lawyer. I almost choked, laughing. They couldn't afford a lawyer, not without my money. But the panic in their words was real. The cabin wasn't just a house. It was their symbol of status, the place they bragged about to friends. Losing it meant losing face, and they'd do anything to stop it. Sarah handled it. She sent a certified letter with the deed and a copy of the original agreement signed by Dad stating the cabin was mine. This should shut them up, she said. It didn't. Instead, Mom called from a new number, her voice trembling. Lucas, how could you? That cabin's our legacy. You're breaking my heart. I let it go to voicemail. Legacy. They'd never invited me to stay there, not once. I spent that evening walking through Pike Place Market, the air thick with fish and flowers. The noise drowned out her words, but not the ache they left. Not guilt, something sadder like mourning a family I'd never really had. The real blow came a week later. Nora texted late, her message short, check Reddit. Ava's gone nuclear. I opened the link. Ava had posted in a crowdfunding subreddit a long sob story about her unstable brother who'd cut off the family out of spite. She claimed I'd stolen the cabin, left them homeless, and forced her to drop out of school. The post had 3,000 upvotes with comments tearing me apart. What a selfish jerk. Hope he gets what's coming. She'd raised 8,000. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling the world tilt. This wasn't just a lie, it was a performance, and she was winning. I didn't rage or post a rebuttal. I called Sarah. Can we do anything? She was calm but firm. It's defamation, but proving it's tricky. For now, keep documenting, send me the post. I did, along with every receipt I had. Tuition payments, cabin repairs, Ethan's loans. Then I did something small but deliberate. I commented on Ava's post, anonymous, no drama. Before you donate, ask about the $60,000 already paid for her school. Some people forget the help they got. I didn't stick around to watch the fallout. I closed my laptop, grabbed my jacket, and walked to a nearby bar. Over a beer, I sketched the Seattle skyline on a napkin, letting the chatter around me fill the silence. By morning, Ava's post was gone, flagged for misleading content. The donations stopped and the comments turned on her. Where's the $60,000? Sounds like you're leaving stuff out. Nora texted, you okay? That was a bold move. I wasn't sure if I was okay. I felt exposed, like I'd stepped into a spotlight I'd spent my life avoiding. But I also felt lighter. The truth wasn't just mine anymore, it was out there chipping away at their story. I thought that was the peak of their desperation. I was wrong. 2 days later, Sarah called, her voice tight. "Lucas, your parents filed a claim against the cabin sale. They're saying you coerced them into signing the deed." My stomach dropped. Coerced? It was absurd, but it was also a delay tactic, a way to stall the sale and drag me back into their mess. I leaned against the Airbnb's window, watching rain streak the glass. "What now?" I asked. Sarah was already on it. "We've got the paperwork. They don't have a case, but you need to come back soon. There's a hearing." I booked a flight home not because I wanted to fight, but because I needed to end this. They thought they could guilt me, scare me, outlast me. They didn't know I wasn't the same Lucas anymore. And they were about to find out what happens when the person you leaned on learns to stand alone. I landed back home on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the air feels heavy with unfinished business. I was 32, no longer the Lucas who'd spent years quietly carrying my family's weight. Seattle had changed me. Those weeks of silence, sketching, and standing on my own had built something new. But now I was back not to fix things, but to end them. My parents' claim against the Catskills cabin sale was a desperate grab, and I was ready to cut the last threads tying me to their chaos. Sarah, my lawyer, met me at a coffee shop near the courthouse. "Their case is flimsy," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "They're claiming you pressured them into signing the deed, but we've got the original agreement, your bank records, and their signatures. They're banking on guilt, not evidence." I nodded, flipping through the documents. Every payment I'd made for the cabin was their $120,000 over 5 years down to the penny. "They're not getting a dime," I said. Sarah smirked. "Not if I can help it. The hearing was set for Friday, so I had 3 days to kill. I checked into a hotel downtown, avoiding my loft. I didn't want to risk running into Ethan or Ava, who'd probably show up with more sob stories. Instead, I spent my time walking the city, rediscovering streets I'd rushed through for years. I stopped at a park, sat on a bench, and sketched the skyline. It felt like claiming the place as mine again, not theirs. But the quiet didn't last. Nora texted Wednesday night, "Heads up, your dad's been calling family friends, saying you forged the deed. They're trying to rally support before the hearing." I sighed. Of course they were. They couldn't win on facts, so they were weaponizing sympathy. Thursday brought a new low. I got an email from Mom forwarded to Sarah for the record. It was long, tear-soaked, and calculated. "Lucas, you're tearing us apart. Your father's health is failing from the stress. Ava's dropped out of school. We're losing everything because of your selfishness. Please let's talk before it's too late." No mention of the years I'd paid their bills, no hint of accountability. Just pain framed as my fault. I didn't reply, but I saved it. Sarah called it emotional blackmail and added it to the file. "They're building a narrative," she warned. "Be ready for theatrics tomorrow." The hearing was in a small, sterile courtroom, the kind that smells like old wood and bureaucracy. I sat next to Sarah, my suit feeling like armor. My parents were across the aisle, Mom dabbing her eyes, Dad staring straight ahead like he was above it all. Ethan and Ava were there too. Ethan scowling, Ava fidgeting with her phone. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, called the case. Sarah presented our side first, the deed in my name, the signed agreement, bank records showing every payment I'd made. "Mr. Hayes funded the property entirely," she said. "The claimants have no legal stake." Then their lawyer stood, a budget hire who stumbled over his words. He argued I'd manipulated my parents into signing the deed, that I'd promised the cabin was a family asset. No evidence, just stories. Mom took the stand, her voice trembling. "Lucas was always so generous. We trusted him. He said the cabin was for all of us." A tear rolled down her cheek, perfectly timed. The judge didn't react, just asked for proof. Their lawyer fumbled, offering only a handwritten note from Dad claiming I'd verbally agreed to share the property. Sarah countered with the original contract signed and notarized. The judge's expression said it all, case closed. But Dad couldn't resist. As the judge prepared to rule, he stood, ignoring his lawyer's frantic gestures. "Your Honor, this isn't about money. This is about family." My son's turned his back on us and now he's stealing our home." The judge cut him off. "This is a courtroom, not a soap opera. Sit down." Sarah squeezed my arm, whispering, "We've got this." The ruling came fast. The claim was dismissed. The cabin was mine, free and clear. I exhaled, feeling a weight lift, not joy, but clarity. Outside, my family cornered me in the hallway. Ava's voice cracked. "Lucas, I'm homeless because of you. I'm crashing on friends' couches." Ethan stepped closer, fists clenched. "You're a coward, hiding behind your lawyer." Mom grabbed my arm, eyes wet. "We're your family. How can you do this?" Dad just glared, silent for once. I looked at them, really looked, and saw strangers. "You made your choices," I said, voice steady. "I'm making mine." I walked away, their shouts fading behind me. That night, I met Nora at a dive bar. She slid a beer across the table. "You held your ground?" "I'm proud." I shrugged, still processing. "It doesn't feel like winning." She nodded. "It's not about winning. It's about freedom." We clinked glasses, and for a moment, I felt lighter. But the next morning, Sarah called, her tone urgent. "Lucas, they're not done. Your parents just filed a lien on your loft claiming you owe them for past support. And Ava's posted again online saying you left her destitute." My heart sank. They weren't fighting for the cabin anymore, they were fighting to keep me trapped. I stared out my hotel window, the city sprawling below. I'd won one battle, but they were rewriting the war. I called Sarah back. "Prep for the lien and start the loft sale. I'm done with this place." She paused. "You sure that's your home?" I wasn't sure of much, but I was sure of this. I wasn't going back to being their lifeline. They'd pushed too far, and now I was ready to burn the bridge. What I didn't know was how low they'd go to stop me or what I'd find when I dug deeper into their lies. The city felt different now, like a place I'd outgrown. I was 32, standing at the edge of a life I'd built for others, ready to let it go. After the courtroom win, I thought I'd feel free. But my family's new lien on my loft and Ava's latest online smear campaign tightened the knot in my chest. They weren't just fighting for money, they were fighting to keep me small, useful, trapped. I wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. Sarah, my lawyer, called me at the hotel the morning after the hearing. "The lien's a stretch," she said, voice steady but sharp. "They're claiming you owe them for support from your childhood food shelter, the works. It's nonsense, but it'll delay the loft sale." I paced the room, staring at the skyline I'd once loved. "How long?" I asked. "A month, maybe 2, unless we countersue for harassment." I stopped pacing. "Do it. And dig into their finances. I want to know what they're hiding." Sarah paused. "You sure?" "That's a deep dive?" I was sure. Something about their desperation felt off, like there was more to the story. I spent the next few days tying up loose ends. The Catskills cabin sale was finalized, the money deposited into a new account they couldn't touch. I met Nora for lunch at a quiet deli, her eyes scanning me like she was checking for cracks. "You're different," she said, slicing her sandwich. "Stronger." I shrugged, picking at my fries. "I'm just done being their doormat." She leaned in. "They're telling everyone you're mentally unstable now. Aunt Karen called Mom, said your dad's pushing for a psych evaluation." I laughed, but it was cold. A psych evaluation. They were grasping at straws, trying to paint me as the problem to anyone who'd listen. Ava's new post hit that night. I saw it on a burner account I'd made to keep tabs. She'd moved to TikTok a tearful video about losing everything because her brother turned his back. She mentioned the loft, implying I was evicting them from a home they never lived in. Comments poured in. "He sounds heartless. You deserve better." She'd raised $3,000 in 24 hours. I sent the link to Sarah, my jaw tight. "This is getting out of hand," I texted. She replied, "We're building a defamation case. Keep your head down." I tried, but the lies were everywhere, spreading like wildfire. Then Sarah's deep dive uncovered something that changed everything. She called me late, her voice tense. "Lucas, you need to see this. Can you come to my office?" I drove over the city lights, blurring past. She handed me a stack of documents, bank statements, emails, and a contract I'd never seen. "Your parents took out a second mortgage on their house 3 years ago," she said. "They used your name as a co-signer without your consent. They've been funneling the money to Ethan's business ventures and Ava's credit card debt." I stared at the papers, my pulse hammering. My signature was there forged clean as day. They'd stolen my identity, racked up $80,000 in debt, and never said a word. I felt sick, not just betrayed, but violated. All those years I'd paid their bills thinking I was helping, they'd been bleeding me dry behind my back. "How did I miss this?" I muttered. Sarah's eyes softened. "You trusted them. That's not your fault." She laid out the next steps. File a fraud claim, freeze the accounts, and pursue criminal charges if I wanted. This is Big Lucas. It's not just about the loft or the cabin anymore. I nodded, but my mind was spinning. I'd spent a decade being their safety net, and they'd been cutting holes in it the whole time. I drove to the park that night, the same one where I'd sketched days before. I sat on a bench, the air cold and sharp, and pulled out my journal. I wrote one sentence. They didn't just take my money, they took my trust. It hurt more than I expected, not because I loved them less, but because I'd loved them so much. I thought of the holidays I'd funded, the late-night calls I'd answered, the dreams I'd shelved to keep them afloat, and they'd forged my name like I was nothing. Nora texted as I sat there. "Your mom called my dad begging for a loan, said they're losing Lucas and need help to fix it. They're falling apart." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Sarah. "File the fraud claim and send them a cease and desist for the online posts." She didn't hesitate. "Done. But Lucas, this'll get ugly. They might go public with more lies." I looked at the stars faint through the city haze. Let them. I've got the truth. The next morning, I walked into my loft for the first time in weeks. It felt like a museum of a life I didn't want anymore. The couch where I'd crashed after long work days, the photos I'd hung to make it feel like home. None of it included them. I started packing, not much, just clothes, my sketchbooks, and a few books. I was ready to sell, to leave this city and its ghosts behind. But as I boxed up my life, Ethan showed up. He didn't knock, just used the spare key I'd forgotten he had. "We need to talk," he said, voice low like he was trying to sound tough. I kept packing. "Say what you came to say." He paced hands in his pockets. "You're destroying us, man. Ava's a mess. Mom's crying all the time. Dad's talking about selling the house. Why can't you just stop?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw a stranger wearing my brother's face. "You forged my signature," I said, calm but cold. "You took out a mortgage in my name. You don't get to lecture me about family." His face went pale. I didn't..." He stammered, then turned and left the door slamming behind him. I sat on the floor surrounded by half-packed boxes and felt the weight of it all. Not anger relief. The truth was out and it was uglier than I'd imagined, but it was mine to wield. Sarah called later that day. "The fraud claim's filed. We've got a meeting with the bank tomorrow. And the cease and desist is out, Ava's posts are down." I thanked her, then booked a flight to Portland. I needed space, a new horizon before the next fight. But as I boarded the plane, Nora sent one last text. "Your dad's planning something big. He's talking about a public apology to win you back. Be careful." I stared at the message, the plane's engines humming. A public apology. It wasn't about love. It was about control, and I was done playing their game. Portland's air hit me like a clean, crisp green alive. I was 32, no longer the Lucas who'd carried my family's weight for a decade. The fraud claim, the forged mortgage, and their relentless lies had stripped away any lingering guilt. I'd landed here to start over, but my family's public apology loomed like a storm cloud. Nora's warning echoed they weren't done trying to claw me back. I wasn't running anymore, though. I was ready to cut the last thread. I settled into a small rental, a studio with a view of the Willamette River. My loft was on the market, the Catskills cabin sold, and Sarah was handling the fraud case. The bank had frozen the second mortgage my parents took out in my name, and criminal charges were on the table. I spent my first days exploring Portland's bookstores and coffee shops, sketching bridges and trees in my journal. It felt like breathing again, like I was finally allowed to want things for myself. But the past wasn't done with me yet. Nora texted 3 days after I arrived. "It's happening. Your dad posted a video on Facebook." I braced myself and clicked the link. There he was, 60, sitting in their living room, voice heavy with rehearsed regret. "We've made mistakes," he said, eyes glistening. "Lucas, our son, we pushed you away. We're sorry. Come home." Mom sat beside him, nodding, tears on cue. Ava and Ethan were in the background, looking uncomfortable but complicit. The caption read, "Family is forever. Lucas, we love you." Comments flooded in old neighbors, distant cousins, strangers. "Forgive them, they're trying. Don't let pride ruin this." I watched it twice, not because I believed them, but because I needed to understand their angle. This wasn't an apology, it was a performance, a last-ditch effort to guilt me into compliance. Sarah called minutes later. "It's strategic," she said. "They know the fraud case is tight. This makes them look like victims if you don't respond." I leaned against my window, the river glinting below. "What's our move?" I asked. She was blunt. "Ignore it. The bank's investigating and we've got enough to bury them, but you need to decide how far you want to go." That night, I met Nora over Zoom. She'd flown to visit her parents, but wanted to check in. "The video's everywhere," she said, sipping wine. "People are calling you heartless for not replying." I shrugged. "Let them. I'm not playing their game." She smiled, proud but cautious. "Your mom called me, begging me to talk to you. Said they're losing the house. What do you want to do?" I didn't hesitate. "Nothing. They made their bed." Nora nodded, but her eyes held a flicker of worry. "Just be careful. They're desperate." Desperate was an understatement. 2 days later, Ava emailed me directly, the first time she'd reached out without a public audience. "Lucas, I'm sorry. I didn't know about the mortgage. I was just trying to stay in school. Please, can we talk?" I read it, waiting for the old pull of responsibility. It didn't come. She'd known enough, known the lies, known the game, and still played along. I archived the email without replying. Sarah had taught me something: silence was my power now. The bank meeting came a week later, virtual, with Sarah by my side. The investigator laid it out. My parents had forged my signature, funneling $80,000 to Ethan's failed consulting gig and Ava's credit card sprees. The evidence was ironclad: emails, bank records, even a text from Dad to Ethan saying Lucas won't notice. The bank offered a settlement. They'd clear my name, cancel the debt, and pursue charges if I agreed. I signed the papers, my hand steady. "Press charges," I said. Sarah didn't blink. "It's done." The fallout was swift. Nora texted, "Your parents got a court notice. They're panicking." Ethan tried calling, leaving a voicemail that swung from anger to begging. "You're ruining us, man. Just drop this, please." I deleted it. Ava's TikTok went quiet. Her crowdfunding pages shut down after Sarah's cease and desist. The public apology video was still up, but comments had turned, "Where's the $80,000? Sounds like you owe him an apology." The truth was spreading, and they couldn't outrun it. I thought that was the end, but Dad made one last move. He showed up at my old office where I'd redirected mail. My assistant Jen called me. He left a letter, "Lucas. Want me to scan it?" I said yes, curious despite myself. It was handwritten, shaky, not typed like before. "Lucas, we're losing the house. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You're my son. Please." No mention of the forgery, no real accountability. Just a plea dressed as remorse. I stared at it, feeling nothing but a faint echo of the kid who'd once wanted his approval. I told Jen to shred it. The house, the one I'd helped save years ago, went to auction a month later. I didn't attend, but Nora sent me a photo of the sign foreclosure sale. My parents moved to a rental, Ethan crashed with friends, and Ava took a job at a mall, her art school dreams on hold. I didn't gloat. There was no victory in their collapse, just a quiet finality. I'd given them everything, my money, my trust, my time, and they'd burned it all. Now they were learning to stand without me. I settled into Portland for good, buying a small condo with a balcony overlooking the river. I started a new project, a cybersecurity app for small businesses, something I'd always wanted to try. I sketched every evening, my pencils tracing lines that felt like promises to myself. Nora visited one weekend, bringing a bottle of whiskey and her blunt honesty. "You did it," she said, raising a glass. "You're free." I clinked her glass, the city lights flickering outside. "Yeah," I said. "I am." One night, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Ava using a friend's phone. "I know you won't reply, but I'm sorry. I get it now. I hope you're happy." I read it, my thumb hovering over the reply button. I didn't type anything. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't need her words to feel whole. I archived the text and stepped onto my balcony, the river dark and steady below. I thought of the boy who'd tried so hard to hold his family together, who'd thought love meant carrying their weight. He was gone now, and in his place was me, Lucas, 32, free. The stars were out, brighter than I'd ever seen in the city. I didn't need their apologies or their approval. I had my own light, and it was enough. Story 2. I touched down on Christmas Eve. Eric is my name. I haven't gone home in 2 years, and I'm 32. I used to like the craziness of too many people in one place, the snow, the food, and the holidays. However, things altered due to greed following my parents' divorce and my siblings' recovery. After moving across the nation in search of a better life, I ultimately established a solid existence for myself with a steady tech career, a peaceful apartment, and a group of true friends who were not only a walking wallet, but also an integral part of my identity. I missed my home. I primarily missed my grandfather. I made the decision to fly back this year after months of ignoring group conversations and my sister's guilt-tripping texts. I kept my arrival a secret from everyone. I thought I would surprise them. I'm joking. The ancient house which I had assisted in renovating with my own hands was where the Uber dropped me off 10 years ago. It was completely dark. There are no lights on. There isn't a car in the driveway. Not even the food odor coming from the door. I used the key I'd held since college to get in after knocking twice. I was struck initially by the quiet. Then I heard the crinkling of plastic coming from the kitchen. He was there when I rounded the corner. Grandpa Joe is wearing 2 sweaters, staring at a crossword puzzle, and seated at the table with a thin lunch on a paper plate. I went cold. He perked up and replied, "Eric, and for a second?" He looked younger, I promise. "What's going on, Grandpa?" He shrugged wearily. "They claimed to be heading to Disney for a week when they departed this morning." Left a message. In my sister's curly handwriting, the message was posted to the refrigerator. It said, "Make the travel arrangements using the holiday money you sent. Grandpa couldn't be taken. He gets like that, you know. I take it you're the one in charge? Keep an eye on him for a week. He looks." After a whole minute of staring, I burst out laughing. Not a joyful chuckle. When something inside of you snaps, you do the dry kind. Even the fact that I paid them for a holiday typeface escaped my memory. As it happens, one of my birthday transfers was classified as normal. Grandpa was folding his napkin gently when I glanced at him. He refused to look into my eyes. "Did they abandon you?" Holding myself together, I asked. "They said." I was too whiny. "Almost remorseful," he said. "Additionally, there are no wheelchair ramps at Disney. Your mother simply grinned and remarked, I'd ruin the magic, when I assured them I didn't mind." Something within of me changed. Not out of rage, just icy clarity. After my sister was unintentionally expelled from school, I paid off her student loans, and I had spent years going above and above for this family. I co-signed for my mom's utilities during her spiritual phase after she quit her job to become a life coach, and I helped my brother obtain his real estate license so he could boast about flipping a property. And this is how I was thanked. I prepared a decent meal for Grandpa. We watched Matlock repeats in the living room while eating leftover ham and potatoes from the freezer. He was calm and contemplative. However, he mentioned something unexpected just before bed. "They'll regret this," he said as he bent over and switched off the television. Then, knowing, he grinned slowly. I remained up that night gazing at my childhood room's ceiling. My mind is playing back every slight and favor like a horrible highlight reel. I didn't want to Venmo her for a bachelorette trip, so my sister labeled me emotionally constipated and laughed at me for living alone when my mom posted on Facebook about how difficult it is to be a single parent just after I had paid her rent. When my brother took my car and returned it with a shrug and a damaged windshield, I wasn't invited. I just asked for basic civility, never praise. Like molasses, 3 days went by. I remained with Grandpa, prepared his meals, and saw to it that he took his medications. We spoke more than we had in a long time. He told me stories about my grandma and her love of the garden, about my dad when he was younger, and about the old neighborhood before it was overrun with expensive yoga studios and hip cafes. I became even more irate since it was the type of calm, consistent connection I hadn't experienced in years. Not at Grandpa, but at all the other people who had deserted him in similar manner. However, they believed that I just accepted their reliance on me as the dependable person, the go-to person. Then the doorbell rang on the third day at about noon. When I opened it, I saw my mom looking exhausted and my sister looking red in the face. Like a bouncer, my brother crossed his arms. 2 weary children with Mickey Mouse ears dropping over their foreheads were behind them. With part relief and half accusation, my mother exclaimed, "You're home!" No salutations. Deadpan, I asked. At the very least, I expected a warm embrace. My sister laughed. "Could we enter?" Why they looked at each other. Something concerning Grandpa was murmured by my brother. Said anything strange. I arched an eyebrow. "He's where my mother asked, attempting to ignore me. Is he all right?" "Very," I said, seeing a marine turtle documentary. Why my sister took the lead. "Eric is teaching me how to make them pay," he texted me. What does that signify? I remained in the doorway, leaning against the frame and folding my arms in the same silent, methodical, serene wash. For years, Grandpa was like armor. "That depends," I responded. "What does it signify in your opinion?" My mother appeared shaken. Every time I spoke in riddles, she detested it. She prefers simplicity, particularly when it meant she didn't have to ask twice to get what she wanted. I refused to move even when my sister rolled her eyes and attempted to shove by me. "Really, don't be theatrical, Eric. We were planning. We didn't even anticipate your arrival." "Yes," my brother said, without even meeting my gaze. "After 2 years of ignoring the family, you've suddenly become our moral compass." I couldn't resist grinning. No one was ghosted by me. "After you texted me 3 times, I stopped responding. You woke up at 2 in the morning, requesting funds for a cryptocurrency fraud." He flushed. At last, I moved slightly to allow the children to shuffle by. With one holding a plush Pluto and the other munching on a sugar cane that had long ago melted into a gooey mass, they appeared worn out. As if she owned the area, my mom trailed behind them. "Look," she remarked, letting her high-end handbag fall on the counter. "It wasn't that serious, even if it looks awful. Our absence lasted barely a few days. He was all okay." "No," I said coolly. "He wasn't. I didn't speak louder. Didn't need to." I saw her recoil. In any case, when my sister eventually noticed the food in the refrigerator, the spotless dishes in the sink, and the perfectly folded blanket on the couch where Grandpa had slept off a few times, she hovered near the table. The bits that I hadn't filled in for a few days were beginning to come together. I had taken charge. My sister said, "Eric," in a pleasant voice. Let's avoid turning this become a reality. It's been a tough week for all of us. Have you ever checked on him quiet? I looked at my mother. Did you inform his physician that you were going out of town? Have you left any contacts for emergencies before you departed? Did you even give him his prescription? She blinked. We assumed you would take care of it. Did you not anticipate my arrival? One more quiet. At that moment, Grandpa emerged in the corridor holding his cane like a staff. He was dressed in a cardigan that I had purchased for him the previous year, which he said he disliked, but had been wearing every day since I got there. Then he raised an eyebrow and remarked, well, take a look at who returned from the country of talking mice. In fact, my sister had the audacity to smile. Hello, grandfather. Instead of grinning back, he only glanced at me and nodded once solemnly. The signal was that. I went to the drawer in the kitchen, took out a little stack of envelopes and laid them out on the counter one by one, labeling each one in my own handwriting. The name of Mom, my siblings and sisters. Each one is well written and has the same information. Forms for revocation. What is this? Grabbing his power of attorney, my brother said. I mentioned everything you persuaded Grandpa to sign, including emergency contact paperwork, health proxy, and bank account access. I worked 70-hour weeks 2 years ago in order to advance. My mother's face dropped. He benefited from that. Grandpa stepped up and interrupted, No. You benefited from it. Therefore, you may use my retirement to pay for streaming services, cryptocurrency, and manicures. I never saw my sister go white, however, but I was afraid you said. Flatly, Grandpa said. I was unsure of whom to believe. According to your mother, Eric would never return, that he was indifferent. However, he arrived and witnessed your actions. You, everyone. I held out my own folder, which I had opened. Everything is being transferred over by him, with instant effect. His funds, his medical treatment, and his estate are all under my sole executorship. This home is part of that. Dead quiet. It appeared as though my brother had swallowed a lemon. Are you throwing us out? I made eye contact with him. This is not your home. With a voice that wavered between anger and fear, my mother took a step forward. Please, Eric. You have no idea how much we have accomplished. Oh, I get it exactly. You left him behind. You left a crippled guy alone with a lunch and no medication while using my money to visit Disney. Then 3 days later you arrived. Similar to the irrational one. No, you are no longer able to change the course of events. I gestured toward the refrigerator where the letter was still hanging. I will never allow you to write that in our house again. I then went over, took it off, and rolled it up in my palm. The voice of my sister broke. That's it then? Are you simply interrupting us? No, grandfather. He answered in a firmer voice than I had heard in a long time. Yes, I am. They appeared astonished. I opened the front door. Happy Christmas! My mother paused as though she wanted to say something, but she didn't. It's not an apology, not even a justification. Nothing but quiet. Then she turned and left. My brother trailed, hauling his bag as if it were stones. My sister stayed. I'm still holding out hope that someone may reconsider. We didn't. When the door behind them clicked shut, she walked out. Grandpa sat down after taking a deep, steady breath. I went with him. His eyes were weary, yet he smiled at me with a 20-year-old smile. You know, he muttered, they will make an attempt. I'm hoping for it. Since I hadn't told them everything, I answered. Not quite yet. There was silence the following morning. Too silent, nearly. Grandpa had already risen and was enjoying his customary dry toast and black coffee while reading the paper. I was humming something that I barely remembered from my youth. I was still half expecting the door to knock again. Perhaps my mother was offering a plate of muffins as a pathetic compromise, but it never materialized. I wasn't anticipating one. I needed to do something else. I opened a spreadsheet that I had created the previous evening after logging into my laptop after breakfast. It was a straightforward list of all the transactions I had done with my family during the previous 5 years. It was nothing spectacular. Every emergency payment loan and transfer that somehow turned into a permanent one. I have paid for every utility without ever receiving gratitude. I had colored it red for my mother, green for my brother, and blue for my sister. Nearly half of the sheet was red. Behind me, Grandpa padded in, looked at the TV, and arched an eyebrow. "Have you always planned out your retaliation thus well?" I grinned. "Only in intimate situations." He drank his coffee and laughed. "Remember when your sister purchased the electric foot spa with my Medicare card?" I responded. "I'm already on the list, and I reported it to the organization. Government program fraud. It's not something you simply ignore." His laughter became a wheeze. "Laugh. You underestimate how much you resemble your grandma. With a well-written letter, the lady might split a man in two." I couldn't help but smile, but beyond the comedy, I felt uneasy. Not remorse. That's right. Something more pointed. Something more substantial. This was no longer a fantasy of small-time retaliation. This was fairness. Or perhaps I had just drawn a line in the sand for the first time. 1 minute. The call began at 12 February. Unknown figure. Then another. Then my mom's second line appeared along with her contact information. My aunt's phone must be what she was using. I let it to ring. Someone texted me. "We must speak. This is getting out of control. Be reasonable, please." My sister then followed up with another. "What are you doing?" Only a few days passed. "You're being unkind." Then another. "I promise to reimburse you if this is about the money. I simply require some time." The thread was muted by me. Grandpa raised his head from his crossword puzzle. "Do they still believe this relates to the trip to Disney?" "Yes." He gave a head shake. "You were never understood, child. Unless it was advantageous to them, they never gave you credit for anything. You remained the same. They just ran out of reasons." I gazed at my screen's glowing notification box. There are currently 20 unread messages, perhaps more. My brother continued attempting to get me into his half-completed real estate project by presenting investment chances like bait. Under Grandpa's name, he obtained a second mortgage on a duplex when his bank account was still partially accessible. Said that it was only transitory. Said he'd pay it off after a huge flip. But I'd found the papers 2 nights earlier, and there was nothing temporary about it. I thought about the streaming accounts my sister had attached to Grandpa's email, paying him monthly for 5 different platforms. He didn't even know how to utilize. Considered the doctor's visits, which she says she set up for him. It became out that his retirement account was being used to pay for massages and hair appointments. I also remembered my mother and the adorable little comments she would write on birthday cards, followed right after by the words, "Hey, could you help with this thing?" As if love were a commodity. The many ways Mom would shame me into keeping quiet when I voiced my concerns. She said I was aloof and chilly at the time. I questioned why Grandpa's medications were never delivered on time. They were parasites. Finally, they struck a host that retaliated. I got up and picked up the folder I had been gathering. Printed declarations, screenshots, legal documents, and emails were all contained there. Everything is in its proper place. Everything was backed up. I was no longer only tidying up after them. I had a case to make. "Grandpa, where are you going?" As I made my way to the door, I asked. I said lawyer's office. He nodded contentedly. "Say hello to Sheila. That strange dog is still with her. Still dresses in the little vest as though it were a tuxedo." Did he smile that much? More sophisticated than your mama ever was? I chuckled, but I felt sick to my stomach since this went beyond a spoiled vacation or a self-centered family outing. They attempted to appropriate this legacy, and I was not going to allow them to get away with it. My phone buzzed once more as I ventured outside into the snow. It was a different number this time. I clicked on the text. The notification was visible to us. "Give us a call back right now. This has gotten out of hand." A screenshot of the duplex's foreclosure alert was included. They were aware. Excellent. After putting the phone in my pocket, I set off on foot. Not in a hurry. Simply be steady, concentrated, be calm, like your grandfather's crossword puzzle. One package at a time. Give them a panic. So yet, they had not seen anything. Everything fell apart in less than a week. I gave Sheila to her. The folder belonged to Grandpa's longtime lawyer and former neighbor. She silently went through it. With every page turn, eyebrows are raised. By the time she reached the part about the second mortgage my brother had obtained in Grandpa's name, she gazed up at me as she carefully closed the file. "Are you certain you want to use nuclear power?" She folded her hands and asked, "If I wasn't, I wouldn't be here." I said. She gave a little smile after nodding. They have no idea who they have messed with. We legally revoked my mother's and my siblings' financial and medical power of attorney within 48 hours. Because of Grandpa's age and the proven proof of compulsion, the compromised accounts were frozen, the bank and retirement fund were informed of suspected abuse, and the legal process to reverse the improper mortgage was initiated. Unexpectedly, the bank cooperated. Sheila approached the fraud unit after handling elder abuse instances in the past. Everything happened really fast. Every account that my family believed they had authority over had been closed or frozen by the end of the week. One by one, all of their regular fees, from gym memberships to Amazon Prime accounts to an absurdly costly wine subscription, were rejected. That aspect didn't even need any effort on my side. By themselves, the dominoes fell. They must have thought I was bluffing and that I would finally give in once more and cover things up as I usually did. They were mistaken. I had a knock on the door the day after the bank canceled the second mortgage. My brother was the one. He made no effort to conceal his terror. "Whatever you did, Eric, you must take it back. I'm having problems. Like the last time I rested my weight on the door frame, I have no problem with it." "Yes, it is." He lost his temper. "The loan is being called in. Those payments are beyond my means. I intended to invert it. In order to obtain a loan, you falsified Grandpa's signature." He didn't comprehend. "That isn't a financial commitment. It's a crime." He went pallid. "There are no pressing charges, are there?" I didn't respond. "Allow him to wriggle." He dropped the bluster and moved on. "Look, I made a mistake, but this isn't enough to wreck my life. Your life won't be ruined by me." Silently, I said, "I simply want to make sure you don't destroy this." In his face, I closed the door. My sister tried her luck that day. She never approached the door. She gave a call. The first 3 I disregarded. However, I picked up on the 4th attempt. She jumped right in without saying hello. "Eric, my automobile is going to be lost. I'm not to blame. My accounts were locked. This month, I was unable to even pay my rent. How should I proceed? Get a job that doesn't require you to steal from a 78-year-old, perhaps?" Her voice became venomous when she became silent for a while. "You always believe that you are superior to us." "No," I said. "I just quit acting like we were the same." She broke down in tears. "Or pretend it's difficult to tell now. Family doesn't do this. We're being torn apart by you. That's what you did." Flatly, I replied. "My goal is to prevent you from doing it again." I ended the call. Sheila phoned the next day with some news. "Your mom is attempting to argue." "The changes," she remarked, submitted a plea to restore access to his retirement savings and authority over his medical proxy. She did, of course. At that moment, I wasn't even upset. Simply exhausted. In order to move Grandpa's assets into a trust with me, serving as the only trustee, I asked Sheila if we could expedite the following step. In this manner, it would be impervious to even a challenged will. Sheila acted quickly, and everything had already been transferred for filing before my mother's legal request finally made it through the system. This time, she appeared in person. She was standing on the porch with a tin of cookies makeup done and a fitting coat as if we were sitcom characters when I answered the door. She had a fragile grin. She responded, "I brought your favorite." I looked at her a while. "In a tin I gave you for Christmas last year, you brought store-bought sugar cookies." Her grin dimmed. "Can we have a conversation?" I closed the door behind me and went outdoors. She replied softly, "You're making a mistake. This is your own grudge. The family will be torn apart by it." I didn't answer. Eric, I understand that we weren't flawless, but we are your family. In order to meet Goofy, you left your father alone with a sandwich and no medicine. She did once, as if I had smacked her. It's unfair. No, the fact that you took advantage of me for years is unfair. The fact that you made me the backup plan is unfair. The safety net, the wallet that doesn't talk. As well as when I requested the absolute minimal, for the sake of respect. You silenced me out of decency. Her face grew stern. He was all okay. No, he wasn't, I remarked, taking a step forward. He may have fallen. He could have suffered a stroke. Because you were so preoccupied with shooting pictures in front of Cinderella's castle, you wouldn't have even realized. I interrupted her as she attempted to speak. You didn't simply ignore him. You have forgotten your parents. I went back inside after turning around. She didn't return to the residence after that. In the months that followed, the matter was resolved. For the first time in years, Grandpa was more like himself. I made the downstairs bathroom completely accessible, and we were able to get him into a better physical therapy program. We even established a pattern. We would order meals and watch vintage detective series on Thursdays, which were diner movie nights. He said that it restored his youth. I established a home office in the basement and changed my employment to one that was entirely remote. The art was honest, tranquil, and serene. No manipulation, no phony apologies, no drama. Grandpa, myself, and a house that at last felt like home again. Regarding my family, the duplex was lost by my brother. He had been using it as security for a second investment, it turned out. He kept it a secret. He attempted to have me appear in court for me meddling with his affairs. After examining the evidence for 15 minutes, the judge rejected it. When I last heard from him, he was attempting to launch a podcast on resilience and had moved back in with a buddy. After 3 months of non-payment, my sister was evicted by her landlord. She once texted me to seek for assistance. A guilt-tripping diatribe about our past intimacy. And this can only be fixed by you. I never answered. My mother vanished for a time. No postings, no calls. Then one day, I received a blog from a mutual acquaintance. She had begun to recover from having narcissistic kids. Now apparently, I was the bad guy, a chilly, resentful son who let his heart to be rotted by prosperity. I blocked her after reading it once and went on. Grandpa, too. He's doing okay. I'm even learning how to play cribbage from him. He says it's part of the charm, but he cheats. He turned to me and whispered, "You saved me," as we sat on the porch one evening and watched the sunset. I shook my head. No, you were always valuable. I just stopped waiting for them to behave in the same way that you did. After giving my hand a pat, he sighed and leaned back. He reiterated that they will regret it. They do already, I answered. And since we had finally prevailed and the conflict was done, we both grinned this time. Story 3. I'm 26 years old, and my name is Alex. I sat by myself in a restaurant booth that was supposed to hold 10 people a few weeks ago. A largely uncooked steak in front of me that is getting chilly, and a folded black robe next to me. It was the banquet for my graduation. It was meant to be anyhow. After years of studying during the day and working full-time at night, surviving on hand-me-down textbooks and coffee from vending machines. At last, I had taken the stage and obtained my clinical psychology master's degree. Although I hadn't anticipated fireworks, I had been clinging to this evening as a special occasion. A small party with those who expressed their pride in me. I paid in advance for personalized desserts with our last names written in gold, rented a private room, and ordered meals in advance so that nobody had to worry. But no one showed up when it was time. Not my brother, not my aunt, nor my mother, who essentially brought me up. Not even Jenna, my cousin, who used to refer to me as her second big brother. I keep my phone in my hand as if it may ping with an explanation or an apology after refreshing it every few minutes and then every 30 seconds. It didn't. Then my mother texted me. Only a single line. "It doesn't have to be all about you." As though I had asked for too much for inviting them to dinner, I read it over until the words ceased to make sense. After a continuous 6-year struggle, I didn't respond. I sensed a chill that doesn't come from the outside as I gazed at my unopened wine glass. 2 hours or so later, I saw it as I was thanking the staff for allowing me to stay until closure and folding the receipt. My brother was smiling like he had won the jackpot in a photo that my aunt had shared on Facebook, displaying a plastic medal that read "Champion of Game Night." All of them had gone to his house. In the backdrop are pizza boxes, cans of soda, laughter. "Proud of the real winner in the family," the caption said. It wasn't until I almost choked on my breath that I realized I was holding it. The post wasn't the only thing. It was the barrage of likes, the giggling emojis in the comments, and the fact that no one had brought me up at all, as like I had done nothing noteworthy. I refrained from crying. I wasn't even immediately upset. After paying the $200-300 charge, I quietly got into my car and went home. The sort of thing when the engine itself seems to be holding its breath. The problem is that they most likely overlooked something crucial. The mortgage on my parents' home was paid off by me. When my brother damaged his shoulder, I was the one who covered his medical expenses. 3 years ago, I attempted to train for American Ninja Warrior. Since COVID struck, I have been covertly paying my aunts and cousins' utilities in order to keep them afloat. Never complained about it. Never requested public acclaim meals or thank yous. However, I recalled each transaction, each overdraft I paid, and each time I told them not to worry. They also didn't. I didn't get any sleep that night. With my laptop open and all of my bank logins and billing accounts arranged in tabs, I sat at my kitchen counter. I made no hesitation at all. I felt as though I had decided on it hours before. It wasn't until my fingers began to move that I realized it. I started by stopping my parents' mortgage auto payments. Next came my brother's gym subscription, which somehow ended up on my card. Next came the food and utilities that I had been paying for my aunt via Instacart. Like removing sopping wet clothing after a rain, each cancellation felt lighter. I didn't leave any cautions or remarks, nothing but quiet. My phone started buzzing constantly in the morning. Mom missed 13 calls. My brother sent me a flurry of SMS, half passive-aggressive, half perplexed. My aunt sent me a single message. What took place? The lights refused to come on. Was there a problem with the account? I didn't respond. I let the quiet speak for itself. The stillness, however, was short-lived. My cousin Jenna arrived at my flat that afternoon. As if the building were on fire, they were knocking. I didn't respond. I stood back and waited as she frantically typed something onto her phone via the peephole. My phone buzzed once again a little while later. "They're freaking out," she texted. "Your mother is in tears. It's unbelievable that you do this according to your brother. Alex, you have to solve this. You're not this person. That's the problem." I was like this. The me who had at last given up waiting for the family I continued to support. I'm hoping that will appear sometime. For years, I had been overly backward. I covered, I paid, I kept them afloat. And one night, when I wanted, only one to make a difference. I was accused of being self-centered for desiring attention. Jen is still a message stone in some way. You're not this person. As if my whole purpose in their life was to serve them in a silent, appreciative, and complaint-free manner. I was out of line if I went beyond that duty. I also didn't respond to her. My mother sent me a lengthy email that evening. She talked endlessly about family conflicts, how insensitive I should be, how they simply became engrossed in the present and failed to see the significance of that evening for me. She concluded by saying, "Over the years, all of us have made sacrifices for you. Behaving as though you've done everything by yourself is unfair." That final phrase was read 5 times by me. Given up. I recall being 19. While my brother used my car to do road trips with his pals, I worked 2 jobs to pay for my textbooks. When my mother begged me for assistance with a short-term loan that was never repaid, I recalled missing meals. They all decided to go skiing as a family at the last minute and neglected to notify me, so I recalled spending Christmas alone. I realized they didn't view it that way after remembering everything. I was merely the additional to them, the contingency plan, the smiling bank account. I made the decision to cease being accessible that evening, but I wasn't finished because as the days went by, my worry gave way to rage. On Facebook, my brother made a crude remark. Some believe that having money elevates one above family. We live in a sad world. I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was harsh and reprimanding. Alex, this isn't how grown-ups deal with things. At dinner, you're penalizing everyone. My aunt also added her voice. We are related. You can't simply leave us. But then something really changed inside of me. Since I was able to. I had to. I had a plan now. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. I let the anger to escalate. Give them more time to stew in their own bafflement and sense of entitlement. My phone kept beeping, but for the first time in what seemed like years, I switched off the alerts, stuffed it in a drawer, and took a stroll around my neighborhood. The air had a fresh feeling. Keep quiet. The guilt-tripping SMS turned into outright accusations over the course of the following several days. The loudest person was my mother. She left voicemails that ranged widely from tearful apologies to sour tirades, and she phoned from many numbers. You know how much I adore you, my darling, 1 minute it was. The next thing that sprang to mind was that you were behaving strangely. Have you become that way as a result of all this education, icy and unkind? She attempted to ensnare a large family. My uncle in Oregon called me. He hadn't spoken to me for more than 3 words since 2018. Hello, child. Your mother is a complete mess. You're punishing her over dinner, she claims. She didn't mean it, you know. I simply hung up. Then came the real kicker. A few nights later, at approximately 10 o'clock at night, I had a frenzied tap on my door, the type that freezes you in your tracks. Through the crowds, I peered. My brother was the one. He was dressed in workout shorts and a sweatshirt, as if he had just rushed out of his home. He had a crimson face, the jaw tightened, walking at a steady pace. He continued banging, and I could hear him talking to himself. Alex, please open up. We must speak. Man, hurry up. You're acting absurdly. I remained still. A few minutes later, he simply stood there and stopped pounding. Then he took his phone out. My phone buzzed out of the drawer a few seconds later. I mean it. Alex, you're being really petty here. You believe that since you have a degree, you are suddenly superior to us. In this household, you've always pretended to be the victim. Adult up. The final straw was that. I entered my home office and accessed each password manager individually. Still connected to their lives, I signed into each and every account, shared credit cards, insurance utilities, and even the Netflix account that my aunt's whole family was still using. On each of their profiles, I selected delete. I take a minute before removing my brother's last auto insurance payment. I then selected confirm. I woke up to a dozen more texts the next morning. Mom, how might the water be turned off? Your dad had to go to the YMCA to take a shower. My sibling, I swear to God, dude, you had best take care of this if my insurance fails. My aunt, this is greater than you. Are you attempting to bring us all misery? Instead, I chose to ignore everyone. I just sent one group SMS. To clarify, I'm not upset about supper. You all made it clear to me how unimportant I was, which is why I'm angry. Unless I had anything to do for you. That night, you made a decision, and I'm just doing what you said. For a few hours, take care. Silence fell. Then Mom said, Alex, you're destroying this family. After looking at the message for a while, I blocked her for the first time ever. They were all blocked by me. However, a letter appeared in my mailbox 10 days later, so the story didn't finish there. Written by hand. No address for return. There was a card inside. The exterior is generic and bland. only 6 words scribbled in a scathing, angry handwriting on the inside. I hope you stay warm with your degree. No name, no signature. However, I knew precisely who sent it. By this point, I had done more than just cut them off financially, so I nearly laughed. I had started another project, something calm, deliberate. You see, I had a ton of voicemail statements and receipts from the years I had been helping them. Once, when I was 21, I unintentionally found out that my mom had taken out a covert personal loan in my name when I was helping her with a mortgage or refinance. At the time, I was too poor to even notice, so I hadn't given it any attention. However, I now had the documents. At that point, the retaliation ceased to be sentimental. It turned into a strategic move. I had already begun the process of notifying the credit agencies about identity fraud. I had evidence that it would take weeks, maybe months, but in the process, I would be clearing my reputation and making hers go through the legal ringers. What about my brother? The loss of my auto insurance turned out to be more severe than I had anticipated. He struck a deer last year and submitted a claim without my payment history covering it, which led to this policy being highlighted. His premium skyrocketed as he was now seen as a high risk. His small Jim Crow way of life is beginning to fall apart. My aunt had launched her bakery on a whim 2 years prior, and she had been using my money to pay for the power. Reviews plummeted under her influence. She had to turn it off for repairs. However, I was aware of my own reality. At last, I was free of the cacophony, the manipulation, and the never-ending cycle of giving and never getting. I was just getting used to my new quiet, though. Something took place. Something I didn't anticipate. A message. From Jenna, this time a genuine one. Since Jenna sent me an email rather than an SMS, I realized right away that she was aware that I had banned everyone. My name was all that was in the subject line. Simple and silent. However, the message's content was lengthy, sloppy, sincere. It caused me to stop before I had even read the second paragraph. Alex, hello. I needed to try, even though I'm not sure whether you'll read this. The gaming night was not attended by me. I worked a shift. It wasn't until later that I realized it was the same night as your graduation dinner. I promise I would have been there if I had known. I sat up a bit straighter as I continued to read each line. I've been reflecting on what transpired, how much you've always done for everyone, and how simple it has been for us all to accept things without ever asking how you're doing. I suppose I simply became accustomed to your constant presence. Quiet and trustworthy. The person in the background who made everything right. It was there, the part I had been given. She continued, but as the lights went out, she freaked out at Lisa's place. The ungrateful young brat who destroyed her business was the subject of her tirade. But I came to a realization even then. They weren't discussing what they had done to you. Nobody once said that perhaps we ought to have been present. It was all about what you stole and what they lost. And I became irritated at that point. Nor at myself, nor at them, not at you. It wasn't until I read the following section that I realized I had been holding my breath. Alex, you didn't just pay for items. The glue was you. We all acted as though we were blind to the fissures. It was simpler to think you were okay, therefore you were hiding the fact that you weren't. We also let you down. I let you down. I wasn't prepared for how hard that portion hit. Because I hadn't considered Jenna to be a contributing factor before then. Sweet and aloof, she was always there. However, as I read those lines, I realized how far the rod had gone. It's complacency, not cruelty. They all grew accustomed to the notion that I was there to maintain operations. Not to rejoice, not to live, but just to get by. The last paragraph was brief. I'm not requesting cash. I'm not requesting anything. I only want to convey that I now see it. I apologize. I see you. I spent a lot of time looking at the screen. The one person who hadn't even been at the heart of the catastrophe offered me the first sincere apology I'd gotten since it all went awry. I had no idea what to do. Part of me wanted to respond immediately. A part of me wanted to erase everything, close the laptop, and return to the peace I had at last won. But there was something like a splinter trying to force its way out of her words, "I see you." I didn't respond. Not that evening. I did something different instead. I didn't drive to my brother's or parents' house. I simply hopped into my car, cranked up the tunes, and left the city, out of the areas where I had lost my visibility. An hour away, I discovered a little town, reserved a budget room at a peaceful inn. I also put my phone in the glove box. My legs hurt from walking so much. Until the sun disappeared below the trees, I sat near a lake. Observe how strangers converse and laugh. They don't know me. They had no expectations. I didn't feel like a caregiver, a squanderer, or a letdown for wanting anything back for once. I had a human feeling. 3 days later, I eventually made it home. Unexpectedly, I discovered something nailed to my door. A letter. No name. There was a photograph and a handwritten letter inside. "You didn't deserve what we did," the message said. "I apologize. I miss you even though I know it's late. Mom, please talk to me." I took the picture at my high school graduation. With my graduation in hand and a skewed smile on my face, I stood in the middle. My mother was holding me by the arm. In the backdrop, my brother was making a goofy expression. I had completely forgotten about that time. I desired to experience an emotion. I'm sorry. Anger, forgiveness. However, I only sensed distance. As if the person in that picture had been a different boy, a different existence. One who, in spite of everything, believed his family would arrive. I put the picture down, walked inside, arranged my desk, and read Jenna's email again. I heard it while my fingers lingered over the keyboard. 3 gentle taps, not a loud knock. There was someone outside, and I thought I knew who it was. I took a while to relocate. There was another knock. 3 gentle taps. I stood almost shyly this time. I approached the door carefully and stopped my hand resting on the handle. After everything, the betrayal, the stillness, the guilt trip, the gaslighting, the silent disintegration of years of unbalanced loyalty, I was breathless for a brief moment. I had been unconsciously moving toward this moment. I pulled the door open. It was my mother. She appeared older, not in Tom's manner, but more in the way remorse leaves a mark on one's eyes. Her hair was loose and frizzy from the wind, yet it had always been done precisely so. Her shoes and coat didn't match. She was not wearing makeup. She appeared human, yet she was smaller than I recalled for the first time in years. I held out my hand as she opened her lips to speak. I said I read the note. She blinked. "I doubted that you would even notice it." I let out a sigh. I said it again. We paused for a long, sharp moment. She stood up and shuffled, looking around the doorway as if she wasn't sure whether she was allowed to move further. I remained still. She wasn't invited in. Her voice cracked as she answered, "Not yet, Alex." I made a mistake. I didn't respond. I waited. She took a deep breath. Dinner wasn't the only thing I ruined. For a while, I messed up everything. I remained silent, though. Without attempting to console her, I wanted to see whether she could do this. She went on, "You were the good kid. Never made a request. Never created issues. And I wondered if I had simply assumed you didn't require the same level of care. That you would always be there and that everything would be well." I gave her a direct look. "You believed me to be a tool rather than a human." I saw her struggle with the reality as her lip quivered. She didn't dispute it. At least that was something. "Over the past 2 weeks, I've been going through everything," she stated. "You covered everything without saying a word, including all of the bills you paid and the money you provided us. About half of it I questioned your father whether he even knew. He didn't. Obviously not." Silently, I said, "No one cared to inquire." Her eyes started to well up with tears, but I didn't flinch. Over the years, I had shed enough tears for the 2 of us. She said, "I don't deserve forgiveness. I am aware of that. But I needed your ears to hear it, which is why I'm here. Alex, I let you down. I repeatedly let you down. And I made it worse. by acting as though you owed us money, as if your affection depended on what you could offer. Family isn't that. That is, I've lost any idea of what that is. Then suddenly, conscious of herself, she took a step back. I'm not counting on you to let me in. I don't even hope for another opportunity. All I want is for you to know. I apologize. And I'll still be sorry if we never speak again. I silently gazed at her. I had lost my anger. I was not even resentful. I had just finished acting. What was the worst part? Do you know? Finally, I said. It was not that no one arrived. It was because you gave me the impression that I was foolish for requesting it, as if I should have known better than to believe that I was that important. She started crying. She then nodded slowly, while holding onto her coat as if it were the only thing preventing her from collapsing. I understand, she muttered. I am aware. It took losing everything to see it for a long time, and I detest that. I responded, You're right, as we stood there. Although I'm not sure what you mean by forgiveness, I do think that individuals can change if they so want. I want to, she replied in a little desperate voice. I no longer wish to be this person. I answered, Then prove it. Not to me, to oneself. Take it first. With a single nod, she seemed to be struggling to keep herself together. Then she took a step back, turned, and left. I didn't return her call. I didn't have to. That evening, I composed a lengthy email while seated at my kitchen table. Not to my brother or my mother. Jenna, not to mine yet. I informed her that I had read and was grateful for her letter, that while it wasn't a panacea, it had some significance. I told her that I thought she was serious, but that I needed time and distance, and perhaps we might discuss when I was ready. I'll be here tomorrow no matter how long it takes, she said. The ensuing weeks remained silent. I concentrated on my task. I helped folks who were attempting to start over at a free clinic downtown, many of whom had also been used or abandoned by their families. I felt less alone during the healing process since I saw aspects of myself in them. My mom took out a fake loan, which I finally paid off. Some documentation was required, a few uncomfortable meetings, and a lot of phone calls. However, I succeeded. After demonstrating identity theft of that money, I even received a little payment. I made no purchases. I started a savings account called Simply Future with a new bank. My brother didn't get back to me. He sold his car and moved back in with that, according to what I observed on social media. A month later, my aunt's bakery formally closed. There was never an apology. I had finally quit waiting for a month at that point, so everything was all right. As summer gave way to fall, I discovered an envelope in my mailbox one cold October morning. Again, no name. This one, however, wasn't from my mother. There was a little card inside. There was a picture of a lake on the front. Calm. Keep quiet indoors. It was a familiar handwriting. There is a spot at our table for you if you ever wish to start afresh. Not because of your abilities, simply because you are the one, Jen. I kept the card in my hand for a while, and I grinned for the first time in more than a year, because for once, I wasn't wanted for what I had to offer. It was sufficient that they wanted me for who I was.